Well, here at Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, we think there might be a few people talking about what Pope Francis is saying. Since Pope Francis was elected to the papacy, he's not the least bit bashful about speaking what's on his mind. He has kind of impromptu news conferences and in-flight press meetings with the media and so forth. And a lot of things that Pope Francis says, like a lot of things that are said by many people in the church, get twisted and misinterpreted and misrepresented. And so what we thought we would do today is offer you an opportunity to call in and basically ask any question you have about what Pope Francis has said or written since he's been the Pope. And Debbie, we have a very special guest who is able to answer all of these questions, but I think everyone listening, Debbie, has got to have some reaction to Pope Francis and the things he is saying and writing.
Well, when you even look at the news, nightly news, it's just really comical because every time he speaks, every time he makes even just a casual statement, there is a dissection process that happens, and everybody just kind of looks into it and reads between the lines and absolutely tries to interpret what he's saying. And it really is, in my estimation, Jerry, and I can't wait till we bring our expert guest on, I really think it can be quite confusing for the faithful, and we need to clear that up because we don't want to misrepresent the papacy at all, but just in our casual conversations. I mean, that could be quite dangerous in some degree. So I'm excited today, Jerry. This is even more exciting. The phone calls are coming in already. See, everybody feels the same way. We really need to clear this up. 1-800-585-9396 is the number to dial. You can get on, speak to Matt Gabinski, and you can listen to the show live, so you're not going to miss not even a detail of the show.
All right, we have Dr. Matthew Bunson with us. He is a writer and editor of the Catholic Almanac put out by our Sunday Visitor. You're the, Matthew, you've got to help me out here. You're the author or co-author of over 50 books. You're on the Vocation Boom Advisory Board, which is why we're together. We're broadcasting live from St. Vincent de Paul Regional Seminary in Boynton Beach, Florida, and Catholic Distance University. I forgot your role there. You can maybe help me with that, but welcome.
Thank you. It's a joy to be with you. I think my first time as a guest on Take Two, so it's a privilege. Yeah, I have the privilege of serving as a faculty chair for the Catholic Distance University. I'm also a senior fellow at the St. Paul Center for Biblical Theology, and like everyone else in Catholic media, it's just almost a full-time job just trying to keep up with Pope Francis.
It sure is, and we're going to be asking you have an opportunity to call in and talk with Dr. Matthew Bunson, who, by the way, authored the first English language biography of Pope Francis after his election. So he knows a thing or two about Jorge Maria Bergoglio, who is now Pope Francis. So if you've heard something, the media has represented what the Pope said in a certain way, maybe you're confused. A lot of people, Debbie, have confusion. I think there's even some people who are, going so far as to question Pope Francis's orthodoxy and things like this based on either the way he'll say something or the way the media will represent something.
And that's why this show is so important. And the phone lines are filling up fast. So, dear listener, if you feel prompted by the Spirit and you want to ask a question to Dr. Bunson about Pope Francis, this is the time to do it at 1-800-585-9396. I just have to brag a little bit about Dr. Matthew Bunson. I mean, he is so humble and he's just truly gifted. I understand that he wrote that amazing book, Pope Francis, in 5 days. This is how I chuckle all the time when I get to meet up with him in meetings because I say, Matthew, do you store all that knowledge in your brain? I mean, it's unbelievable what he knows about the papacy. That's why he is the go-to person for the papacy. And so this is your opportunity. This is your window of opportunity. Take advantage of it. 1-800-585-9396.
Couple things we'll prime the pump with here, Dr. Matthew Bunson. Of course, a lot of people talking about Pope Francis's letter for the Year of Mercy, and he is making some provisions for the Year of Mercy that are quite remarkable.
Well, if we're trying to understand or have a nice introduction to a lot of the confusion that surrounds Pope Francis, I think the letter for the Year of Mercy that he released just this week is a perfect example. Here, Pope Francis isn't simply opening the doors of mercy. He wants those doors even wider. For those who are in search of God's loving mercy, and aren't we all, he wants them to have access to that mercy. And so in the provisions of this, where he granted universal faculties for priests to absolve and lift the ban of excommunication on those who have procured abortions or helped others procure abortion, he's expanded the faculties for the priests of the Society of St. Pius X. All of these gestures intended to help people in this Jubilee Year of Mercy to have that loving encounter. But in doing so, once again, the media has misrepresented and misinterpreted a lot of the things that he's doing and his motivation for a lot of these things. We've heard just in the last few days different people in the media talking about the fact that they're arguing that Pope Francis is weakening the Church's position teachings on abortion, or some in the media have even gone so far as to say that this is the first time that the Church has actually forgiven women who've had abortions. All of these misrepresentations, as I was saying, it's important for us to listen and to read what Pope Francis is saying and writing. Always go to the source and go to reliable sources for people who are talking about it, like EWTN and this show.
Dr. Bunson, and I do want to call you Dr. Bunson because anybody that can write that amazing book, Pope Francis in 5 Days, you deserve the title, Doctor. Dr. Bunson, let me ask you this question. Why is it that the media, it's unbelievable. Pope Francis they'll even clarify his statements, and yet the media wants to take it in a whole different direction. What are we trying to achieve with this? I think I know the answer, but this is really problematic.
I think it stems from a couple of different directions. At first, thank you for your kind words about my book. You say I should be called Dr. Bunson. I think a lot of people just simply call me crazy for trying that. One of the things that we've seen, and this is the media on the very night of his election, they were looking for something new, and boy, they certainly got it. With Pope Francis. This is the first pope from South America, the first Jesuit. He was something very different. And I remember being interviewed by a national radio program minutes after his election, and they had already sort of painted the picture that they wanted to project, and that was a liberal South American Jesuit who was going to reject and absolutely reject everything that Pope Benedict had done, that Pope John Paul II had done, as though some sort of a revolution had taken place. That's a theme that we actually still hear today, despite the fact that the media often wakes up when Pope Francis is giving speeches or writing documents and they realize, good heavens, he is actually Catholic. When you read what he says and writes, you see that he's solidly Orthodox, but that's the image that they projected, and they're still trying to project it on him. There's also the idea on the part of many in the media that they want, if they can, to drag the image of Pope Francis in the direction that they want to go, whether Pope Francis is willing to go or not. And then there's the media's sort of obsession with the new, with what's different, and their desire to influence, I think, what Catholics think, how Catholics believe, what the Church actually teaches. So all of these sort of things come together. And we can add one last little thing about the media. They often act out of not necessarily bad intentions, but they are simply misinformed and don't take the effort to get the facts and what the Church actually teaches and what Pope Francis is saying. So it's a little bit of a melange, a melting pot of bad ideas and misunderstandings.
Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. We've got Joe and Christine and Jim and Dr. Williams, and we have a line open. It's a kind of a Pope Francis Q&A. Anything about the papacy of Pope Francis, especially what he has said and written, 1-800-585-9396. As always, when we come back from this first break, your takes drive the show. So what's on your mind about Pope Francis today? Let us hear from you on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, live from St. Vincent de Paul Regional Seminary in Florida.
We express ourselves in and through our bodies, but we can also reflect God to others in and through our bodies. So, why would I want to treat my body as an object by using birth control and altering a healthy part of myself? I want to be loved and not used. Love. Now that's profound.
To join Human Life International in this discussion, visit truthandcharityforum.org.
If you've wanted to go to the Holy Land, this is your year. And what better time to be there than the Christmas season? I'm Jerry Usher, inviting you to join me, Steve Ray, and our chaplain, Archbishop Samuel Aquila of Denver, on the Vocation Boom Pilgrimage to the Holy Land this December 28th through January 6, 2016. Step foot on the very spot where Jesus was born and visit the many places where he ministered, died, and rose again. For details, log on to vocationboom.com. That's vocationboom.com.
We're so glad you're with us today on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We have a special guest, Dr. Matthew Bunson. He's the expert on the papacy, and he's going to clear up any of the misconceptions, misunderstandings about our Holy Father, the most popular Pope Francis. This is your opportunity. You only have a couple seconds because we're going to hit the phones pretty fast and hear from your fellow listeners, but you may want to text one of your friends and let them know that the show is going on right now, and it'll maybe clear up any misunderstanding about Pope Francis. So we're going to move right along. We're going to go fast. We're going to go to listening on Guadalupe Radio Network. Jim in North Virginia. Hi, Jim. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and our guest, Dr. Matthew Bunson.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call. My question basically just has to do with the recent thing that the Pope had said about given absolution to anybody that had anything to do with an abortion, whether it was the man or the woman. It was always my understanding that that could already be done. I've known several people that have been had some kind of connection with it and had went to confession and thought they were good to go and were receiving communion. But was that not correct?
The Pope Francis has expanded the faculty for priests to forgive the sin of abortion and also to lift the ban of excommunication. What he's done is to universalize what has become very common practice in recent years. The sin itself is called a reserved sin, and which means it is one of the most serious that you can commit. And those who procure an abortion or help those to procure an abortion are subject even to church law, a specific canon in church law called number 1398. And it's because it's a reserved sin. What it meant was that it was up to the bishop to provide the means for absolution for it. The bishop, however, had the right to grant or delegate the faculties to his priests to do that, to grant that absolution and to lift the excommunication. So Francis, as I said, is making this a universal thing. In the United States, for quite some time, it's been almost a universal practice for priests to be able to do that because bishops understood the need for the sacrament of penance to be available for those who had an abortion, who procured an abortion, or also for those who helped to procure it. So what we're really looking at is, while in the United States it's common practice, in different parts of the world it hasn't been. And so Francis wants to make sure that in this Jubilee Year of Mercy, we always have to remember that it's only for this year, it's a universal faculty granted to priests everywhere. So his point is to make that penance, that sacrament of penance, available universally. So I hope that answers your question.
Jim, does that clear it up?
It does. I just had a quick follow-up with that. So if
Sure.
somebody who was not in the church came into the church as an adult, and when they went through the RCIA, and then once all that stuff's been through, if at the end, right before coming to church, they go to confession. If they confess that sin, I mean, obviously they can't be excommunicated because they were never part of the church to begin with. Are they good to go under those conditions?
Right. Right. Well, if obviously if you were baptized, that would take care of the whole issue. But the other thing to remember is that we have to be careful in who is actually liable to excommunication within the church. I say that because there are different ways in which someone would not necessarily be subject to excommunication under Canon 1398. Things, for example, about ignorance, the age of the person who had the abortion. So these are things that you really need to raise with your confessor. And if you're in RCIA, you need to make sure that in the process that you're doing things properly. It's very important to talk with your pastor and with your confessor to make certain that you are really positioned to receive absolution under the exact circumstances that the church needs and under the circumstances that are best for your soul.
Jim, thank you, Jim. We just want to thank you so much for calling in to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and listening on Guadalupe Radio Network. We just appreciate your prayers for this show, and we're going to move rather quickly because we're going to try to get as many calls in as possible today so we can clear up and look at this from every angle. Keep in mind, dear listeners, this is a peer ministry, so we're looking at this from every angle, and then, of course, leaning on Dr. Bunson for his expert explanation of it. So this is what we're going to do. Joe in Newton, Massachusetts, listening on the Station of the Cross. Hi, Joe. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Thank you so much. Hello, Dr. Bunson.
Hello.
In the context of the way the media has presented Pope Francis as basically being a proponent of socialism/communism, I'd like to ask the following question. Isn't the Pope's aggressive criticism of free market capitalism a complete rejection of the Church's past support of subsidiarity?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one that's being asked quite a bit, grounded in the overarching question, does Pope Francis hate capitalism? Does he hate the free market? The best way to start answering that is that back in January, the Holy Father gave an interview to an Italian newspaper, and in it he said that he recognizes very clearly that capitalism, the free market, has lifted millions of people out of poverty around the world. But he has very great concerns based in Catholic social teachings about the impact of things like globalization, of unrestrained capitalism. But he's also speaking from two things. The first is the lived experience of capitalism that he has seen in certainly South America and in the developing world, what he calls the globalization of indifference and ideological imperialism. And many of the impacts of transnational corporations on the developing world. It's all very technical, but his lived experience, again, has at times been a very negative one. He has seen poverty increasing. The other aspect is that he's coming from a position that's firmly rooted in Catholic social thinking. He quotes, for example, Pope Benedict XVI in Caritas in Veritate, his social encyclical, and he quotes as well Leo XIII, who's the provider of what's called the Magna Carta of Catholic social thought and Rerum Novarum. And, of course, Pope John Paul II, who it's easy for us to forget was severely criticized in different quarters, especially in the United States, back in the 1980s and 90s, with his social encyclicals, I think especially of Centesimus Annus, for his, what some people thought was a withering critique of capitalism. So Francis, as I said, is coming from that lived experience, but he's also speaking from the position and quoting extensively from the social encyclicals of other popes. So there's nothing really new in what Pope Francis is saying. He's simply orienting toward a globalization, in other words, a global perspective that we haven't really had before.
Does that help?
Source of that Italian article, can I follow up on that just by maybe
certainly.
That on
it was published in La Stampa in January, and the interview was with a famous Vaticanista or Vatican expert by the name of Andrea Tornielli.
Great. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Sure.
All right, Joe, thank you for calling Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We are on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network every Monday through Friday at this time, and again at midnight Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific time. So if you're busy during the day and you can't catch the show, do what I do sometimes, getting ready for bed in the evening. And it's really different, Debbie, isn't it, listening to the show versus being on it? But you and I kind of both get that opportunity in the evening. So
We do, and I have to tell you, I actually like listening to it the second time because, I mean, we're doing it live the first time, but the second time I really pick up new, little nuances that I didn't, pick up while doing it live. So I really want to encourage our listeners to, if you missed something, maybe go and pull the rebroadcast or the archive even on the take2show.com, and you can, or even the short takes. The short takes are just brilliantly done by Rich and Jesse and Jeff Bunson, and it is an amazing little snippet of the show, and you can maybe get a feel for what the show was like that day, and that might interest you, and then you might listen to it.
all right, our number 1-800-585-9396. Our topic today, what the Pope said. Pope Francis, we are talking about, I made the mistake earlier of saying Jorge Maria Bergoglio. It's Jorge Mario Bergoglio. I don't know what I was thinking. 1-800-585-9396. So any question you have for Dr. Matthew Bunson, who has authored or co-authored 50 or more books, some with your own mother, by the way, which I think is fascinating. And he wrote the first biography that came out about Pope Francis following his election. So he has studied Cardinal Bergoglio for many, many years. He was ready when the election took place. So he definitely is a source of knowledge. So if you've read or seen or heard something that the Pope said, maybe from his own lips or from the media and their representation, do call and ask your question today, like Christine has done. Christine is in Lakewood, Colorado, listening to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Hi, Christine. You're on with Dr. Matthew Bunson.
Good morning, Dr. Bunson.
Good morning.
I have a question. I don't know if it is the Pope himself who gives permission, or bishops under him, or Vatican officials. And my question is, I'll give you an example. The World Meeting of Families, the leadership there is enemies of the church. Why would the Pope or anyone under him put enemies of the church in charge of Catholic programs and Catholic initiatives? I'm really having a hard time with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by enemies of the church. I think it would be safe to say that someone like Archbishop Chaput in Philadelphia would probably very strongly disagree with the idea that anyone at the World Meeting of Families would be an enemy of the church or teaching things that aren't very orthodox. You raise, though, a question that's often asked about Pope Francis, and that is is he perhaps a liberal type of pope? Is he somebody who isn't necessarily adhering to authentic Catholic teaching? Is he too far out? It's a question I know that's been asked really again from the night of his election, and all I can say is that when you read what Francis says, when you see what he does, and if you are very much taking the time to study a lot of the people he's appointing, you'll see that they are very faithful, very orthodox, and that certainly Pope Francis himself, as Vicar of Christ, stands faithfully to the teachings of the Church and also in absolute continuity with the teachings of the Church. So take the time again to read what Francis says, and we always have to be careful, too, about what we're reading in the media, even in some quarters of Catholic media, who may not be interpreting correctly some of the things that are being said and done.
Does that help, Christine?
Naomi Klein, I guess I still don't feel like I really have an answer. What's the purpose putting people like this in positions of power? Is there a purpose?
All right, Christine, hold that thought just for a second. Christine, hang on. Christine, hold on just one second there. We'll let you continue with Dr. Matthew Bunson. This is a hard break that we have to take in Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. So you hear the music there. We'll continue with your call and others on the other side of the break.
Hi, this is Joan Lewis. In my work here at the Vatican, I'm blessed to speak with all kinds of people every day, from visitors to Rome, to Vatican officials, even to the Pope. And every week on our EWTN program, Vatican Insider, I'll share their stories with you. We'll bring you the latest news from Rome. We'll talk with Vatican leaders and newsmakers, and we'll answer your questions. So don't miss Vatican Insider this weekend, right here on the EWTN radio network. For times in your area, go to EWTN.com and click on radio.
Hear what others are saying about listening to EWTN Radio.
I want everyone out there in EWTN and Radio Land to know that when people call into shows like this, I just, throughout my day, will toss up little prayers for everyone who calls in and for all the hosts and everyone. And I spend a lot of time at home because I have transportation problems. And so I do a lot of just little prayers. I just love all you guys.
Listen daily to the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
I am Father Thomas Loya, and this week on Light of the East on EWTN, moral relativism and the rejection of absolute truth is leaving many people both in and out of the church in a state of confusion and restlessness. The liturgies of the Eastern churches, so ancient yet so relevant, provide a constant to which our society can turn for answers. On EWTN, Sundays at 11:30 a.m. Eastern.
I put you on in the morning, and it's like having a friend talk to me during the day, and it refreshes my spirit so I can go about the business of doing my vocation of taking care of my family.
If you have a comment about our programming, we'd love to hear from you too. Call 205-795-5773 or send us an email to radio@EWTN.com. Thank you very much for listening. God bless you.
As always, thank you for listening to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN. The Pope said what? That is our topic today. If you've heard, read, seen something represented that Pope Francis said or apparently said or did, that's what we want you to call in and ask about. We have Dr. Matthew Bunson with us today on the program, 1-800-585-9396. Christine in Lakewood, my deep apologies there. That's just the one break that we have no choice. We got to take it right there. So you were alluding to one particular individual. If you want to repeat who that was, that apparently the Pope has put into a particular position. I'm sure Dr. Bunson can help you with that.
Yes, I read what the Pope says and what he writes, and that's not my issue. I guess it's the appointment. What is the purpose, if maybe you don't know, of appointing particular people to head up leadership positions in Catholic initiatives? What comes to mind is Naomi Klein, or more locally in the U.S., Robert Sirarufui, whatever. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Leading up the World Meeting of Families and things of that nature. I don't understand what the Pope is trying to do or what the bishops are trying to do. I'm just confused why they're drawing in people that are obviously not supportive of the faith.
Right. Well, I would suspect, as I was saying before the break, that the organizers of the World Meeting of Families, the Pontifical Council for the Family, and other officials from the Archdiocese of Philadelphia would probably very strongly disagree that anyone who's at the World Meeting of Families would be saying or doing anything that would be contrary to the teachings of the faith. Oftentimes there are controversies surrounding different appointments to different Vatican posts, different Vatican offices. Academics especially sometimes participate in dialogues and symposia and other things that some people disagree with, and certainly everyone has a right to an opinion to disagree with experts and academics. But again, I think if there's a specific criticism about an appointment, especially to something like the World Meeting of Families, I would really encourage you and anyone with those concerns to have them addressed specifically by the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, by your local bishop, as well as the organizers of the World Meeting of Families. I can speak from long experience that great care is customarily taken, especially on the side of the Vatican and on the side of the organizers of something like the World Meeting of Families, in vetting, to use the technical term, anyone who's speaking or appearing, precisely because of the confusion that can be caused.
Well, Christine, we just want to thank you so much for taking the time and calling in and sharing from your heart and asking the questions from your heart. And here is I really think, Christine, here's a little bit of great news. You're going to see EWTN at World Meeting of Families, and you're going to see Take Two with Jerry and Debbie at World Meeting of Families, and Vocation Boom, Third Millennium Media. Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers is going to be there. I mean, there is so many just wonderful pluses, and so we celebrate that. And Christine, thank you so very much for calling in from Lakewood, Colorado. Wow, this is awesome. We're moving fast. And Drew from Buffalo, New York, you're up next, again, listening on the Station of the Cross. What's going on at the Station of the Cross? You guys are all tuned in to Take Two. I love that. Hi, Drew. Welcome.
Hi there. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I was curious to know, looking at, I think specifically, or especially given that the Pope is from South America, which is a majority Catholic by comparison to other areas that might have a larger Eastern Orthodox population, I'm curious to know what you think under Pope Francis the state of Roman Catholic and East Orthodox affairs might look like, and if you think it's something he might really focus a lot on, if he has already, and I just don't know about it, especially, as I say, being from a culture where there isn't a large number of Eastern Orthodox Christians.
Yeah, actually, that's a great question, because Pope Francis has picked up the reins, so to speak, from Pope St. John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI, and is really trying to get the horses of ecumenism, to torture an image a little bit, even farther down the road. When he was the Archbishop of Buenos Aires, he enjoyed very good relations with the Orthodox community there, as well as the Eastern Catholic community. Since becoming Pope, he's developed a great friendship with Patriarch Bartholomew, the ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople. The two have had a number of significant meetings, one very memorable one in the Holy Land. And Pope Francis credits Patriarch Bartholomew in his encyclical on the environment, Laudato Si, as being a significant contributor to a proper understanding of what he calls integral ecology, the idea of caring for the environment as part of a created order, and remembering that relationship between the human environment and the natural environment. So I think Pope Francis very much wants to continue that dialogue with the Orthodox, and one of the conduits for that, one of the tragic ways that this is actually happening in just a real-world sense, is because of the horrors that are being perpetrated against Christians across the Middle East, thanks to ISIS and other radical jihadist movements. It's a tragedy, but it is also bringing together Orthodox and Catholics in sort of the common problem of simply surviving in the Middle East. It's what Francis and Bartholomew jointly called the ecumenism of blood. And it's the fact that so many Christians are dying together, suffering together, that this is a real opportunity. I hate to use that term, but it's a road that they're traveling together. And I think it's going to have long-term ramifications. One other thing to point out, too, with Francis's outreach to the Orthodox is his effort to continue to develop a relationship with the Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kirill, the Patriarch of Moscow, who heads really the largest of the world's Orthodox communities. So I'm very optimistic, and Francis is very determined, I think, to make that progress, especially building on the progress of Pope Benedict XVI.
How's that, Drew?
That sounds wonderful. I thank you. That's great information. I appreciate it very much.
You are very welcome. And our best to everyone at the Station of the Cross and all of the Take Two with Jerry and Debbie affiliates across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Debbie and I are live at St. Vincent de Paul Regional Seminary in Boynton Beach, Florida. Don't let the word get out about this place. Seminarians will be applying in droves. In fact, they already are. They have a record enrollment here, over 100 men, and it's doubled from what it was 10 years ago. And the Vocation Boom Advisory Board has been meeting here yesterday and today.
And that's why we were talking about that. Deacon Harold's on the advisory board, and he's going to be speaking at World Meeting of Families. That's why we had Dr. Matthew Bunson on today, which was exciting. Monsignor Toops was with us yesterday. Wow, this was a great week, and I have to tell you, and John and Barbara Bertrand on our advisory board, they're with us as well, actually listening right now live to the show. So we're all, doing this as a group effort, and we are just, and in case you don't know the Bertrands, they have a son, Father Jacob, correct? Father Jacob, and it's just amazing. We're just so blessed to have this wonderful meeting in this beautiful seminary. And I tell you, Jerry, I look at all the seminarians, and every one of them has the look of joy on their faces. And they're so incredibly smart and funny and just alive. And I have to tell you that it's just a refreshing experience to be here. I almost don't want to move back to Arizona. No, I'm just teasing. I'll go back to Arizona.
It's a great environment, and we're so blessed to be able to host the show from here with you, our listeners, coast to coast and around the world. Our phone number is 1-800-585-9396. What Pope Francis said, or the Pope said what? We could title it that as well. Any question about Pope Francis, his news conferences, his statements, his writings, his actions, that is what we are talking about with you and Dr. Matthew Bunson today. Margaret is next, also in New York, in the beautiful city of Albany, New York. Margaret, welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and Dr. Matthew Bunson.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. There's just so many things that he says that are so confusing to myself and my family. The first one I want to, the first gentleman that called is, I'd like to go over the abortion and where he lifted and gave the authority to all priests to absolve women going into the confessional. How come the word, and on your radio show too, the word excommunication was never used? When this came out the other day, I didn't even know that abortion was one of the excommunicated sins. I know harming the Pope, trying to want to kill him, doing harm to the Pope or threatening his life, heresy, a few other things too. And abortion, I did not know that abortion was one of the excommunicated sins, of the gravity of the sin. And this Priest for Life, EWTN, on television, radio, every time they have their movements and their San Francisco and Washington, nobody ever brings that up. And I'm like dumbfounded. I feel so stupid. I didn't even know that. And there's no directions there. There's nothing is clear there that this is a serious sin. It's not to be taken lightly. And this, what he's doing by giving this to the whole world during this year of mercy, is just mocking the church and her teachings on grave sin. And we just don't understand that. And then we also, I don't want to...
Margaret, I just want to jump in.
I just want to let you know also, if you could just... If you can just touch on, with the homosexual tendencies, his whole teaching on homosexuality and homosexuals' tendencies must be welcomed with respect and sensitivity in the church. I don't know where he's going with that, because I'm going to tell you right now, they're already welcomed in the church. And just, I don't think I have to go any further with that statement. And
well,
then I like to
hold that
know
thought,
about
Margaret.
his
Margaret, hold on one second.
socialism.
We got to give Dr. Bunson a chance to respond. We want to have our listeners stay current with your question. So first of all, real quickly, Margaret, I just wanted to say to you, you're not alone. So when you first initially raised that about feeling, kind of stupid that you didn't know, you're not alone. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people felt the same way. So you're in good company. So we're going to let Dr. Bunson answer one at a time your questions and concerns.
Debbie, that's a really good question, and it's something that unfortunately we have failed in so many different ways as a community in giving proper catechesis and education to Catholics as they're growing up to understand the gravity of certain actions. Not only is this a sin that brings about excommunication, it's automatic excommunication. In other words, simply doing this brings about that punishment of excommunication. Pope Francis, though, is in no way mocking or removing the importance that the Church places on her teachings regarding abortion. Quite the opposite. He's helping, I think, all of us to understand the numbers of women who unfortunately who have made the choice to procure an abortion, and the large numbers of people who have helped them procure an abortion. And he wants to provide a means for them to remedy this problem, especially given the fact that so many of them spend so many years of their lives carrying the weight of this action. And so he's, as we can attest by the discussions that we've been having this week, he's making people very much aware of the fact that when you do this, when you have an abortion, there are these penalties that are incurred. And again, he's in no way demoting the importance of the teachings of the Church on abortion. In fact, I think he's helping everyone, again, to understand how serious this is, especially in culture. But Francis is also, as he did in his apostolic exhortation called The Joy of the Gospel, Evangelii Gaudium, he's also turning the Church's eye toward those women who have had abortions and reminding them that, yes, you can unburden yourself of this, but he also wants us to be focused as a church on helping women who are making that decision to make the right choice and not to have an abortion. That's something very important to Francis. And in a way, it ties into your second question regarding homosexuality. Pope Francis, of course, very famously used that line, "Who am I to judge?" About homosexuals, about homosexuality. We could spend an hour talking about the exact context of what he actually said on the plane and everything else related to it. In his answer, he actually quoted the Catechism of the Catholic Church and reiterated the fact that homosexual persons must be treated with respect, but in no way does the Church condone or accept homosexuality, the acts of homosexuality. Francis has made that very clear. He's also been, I think, of recent popes, absolutely vocal and very clear in rejecting all forms of what he calls gender ideology, the watering down of what is the created order, a natural law of men and women. So he's done a great deal, I think, especially in this last year as the world has come to grips with things like same-sex marriage, to help clarify the teachings of the Church. The problem is that the media often puts up a filter that we don't actually read or hear what he's actually saying.
All right, I hope that helps. Thank you so much for your call to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, Margaret, and we hope that you will keep listening to the program. And great to have Dr. Matthew Bunson here to help clarify these issues for us. We're going to get a quick break right now, and we'll have Rich take care of that for us and get to Francisco on the other side of the break. So, Francisco, stay with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, and we've got time for others of you as well. Any question having to do with the papacy, the words, the writings, the actions, the intentions, the heart of Pope Francis. I'm not sure Dr. Matthew Bunson can go that deep into our Holy Father, but you get the idea. 800-585-9396.
Hello, this is Kathy Masterson of Priests for Life with a pro-life update. At abortion clinics across the country, the bodies of unborn children are literally thrown in the trash each day. At some of these places, pro-life people have gone into the dumpsters to retrieve those bodies and carry out the corporal work of mercy of burying the dead. Over 40 grave sites now hold the bodies of these children, and on the second Saturday of September, we invite you to join us in honoring them. Simultaneous memorial services will be held at these grave sites on the National Day of Remembrance, sponsored by Priests for Life, Pro-Life Action League, and Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. Please visit abortionmemorials.com to learn more about this special day and to find the nearest memorial service. Read about the history of these burial sites and learn what you can do to help end abortion. This is Kathy Masterson on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
We're so glad you're with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Dear listeners, don't forget to tune in to the special broadcast we have just for you, the Labor Day broadcast, where we're going to hear from our affiliates. It's entitled Working in the Vineyard of Catholic Radio. And if you want to hear your affiliate that has called in and has represented your area, it's kind of a wonderful show to celebrate Labor Day. So don't forget to tune in to Take Two on Monday, and wishing you an early happy Labor Day. Okay, we're going to move right on, as Jerry promised, to Francisco in Indianapolis, Indiana, listening on EWTN.com. Hi, Francisco. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Hi. I just had a comment. My name is Francisco. I got two other relatives. Their name is Jorge. I'm just kind of thinking that I kind of understanding, because I don't really have any problems with him. But being Latino is not a race, it's a culture. And I think us Latinos, when there's problems or anything that's going on in our lives, we always have with wisdom that kicks in for us, especially those of us that truly know our culture really well. My dad's always taught me a lot of things, and, kind of like, tell me who you hang out with and I'll tell you who you are. I think that's what he's trying to do, is trying to act like Jesus himself. Not act, but, he's in that high spot of representing our Lord, and doing that. The enemies, even if they are our enemies, he's not going to get rid of them, because he didn't do it with Judas, and he didn't do it with many others. He actually kept them close and tried to give them grace with love. And that's what the saying can help them. It's like saying, hang out with me, maybe you'll become holy with me, because if you're around holy people, maybe you might repent and become holy again. And
great question.
On all these other things, I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, it's funny when we go back to 1978, when Pope St. John Paul II was elected, and everyone asked the question at the time, well, what does it mean to have a Polish pope? This is something that obviously we'd never had in the church, and we'd gone 400 and some years without a non-Italian pope. So it was revolutionary in a couple of ways, at least by way of elections. We're asking the same question. What does it mean to have the first Latin American pope? Well, it means, for one thing, that we have somebody from a church that is about 500 years old, that was founded after the time of Christopher Columbus. So that the church was 1,500 years old when the faith arrived in the New World. So Latin America is still relatively young, at least in the history of the church. That says something. He's also coming from the region of the world, the hemisphere that has a continent in South America that has the sort of the heart of global Catholicism right now, just by sheer numbers. He's also coming from a place that has a majority of young people who are Catholics under the age of 30. We also have a part of the world that has some of the widest gulf between those who have wealth and those who don't, those who are rich and those who are poor. So those are all of the things that have shaped his life. But the other thing, too, that with Pope Francis that we all need to understand that is such a hallmark of Latin America is the emphasis and the strength of the family. Francis loved his grandmother. She was his favorite person. And Francis is always telling us that we have to help teach the young, but we also have to honor the old. Those are little things that Francis has brought with him. And I think as we've gotten to know him, we're appreciating more and more why and how it's so important for the church and the world to have a pontiff, a vicar of Christ, from that particular region. I always like to say that the College of Cardinals and the Holy Spirit knew exactly what they were doing when they elected him Pope.
All right, Francisco, I hope that helps you. And unfortunately, let's see here, Victor and Robert and the others, this is the part of the show that Debbie and I hate, because it's when we have to end the show, and we always leave callers on the line there. But Dr. Matthew Bunson, in closing, maybe just 30, 45, 60 seconds, how ought we view this papacy going forward? Still a lot to be learned about Pope Francis and from Pope Francis.
Yes, and I think Pope Francis has a lot to teach us. Victor from San Antonio is going to ask a question about thinking like the older son from the story, the parable of the prodigal son. And I think that's a great way to end our discussion today about Pope Francis. For Francis, mercy is everything. It's why he declared the Jubilee year of mercy. Mm-hmm. It's why he wants us to have that encounter with God's loving mercy. It's why he took "with mercy chosen" as his episcopal motto. Mercy for him is something that we need to have in the world. But he also recognizes that mercy is always tempered with justice, just as justice is tempered with mercy. So he stands in continuity with the popes who came before, but he wants us also to recognize that in his own life, mercy has been a transformative power.
Beautiful, beautiful. Dr. Matthew Bunson, we just want to thank you so very much for being with us. We like to put our guests on the spot. Will you come back and be a guest again?
Absolutely. It was a privilege to be here. I had a great time.
Okay, try and break your record of the 5 days. Try and write a big, popular book in like 4.5 days if you can.
I'm sticking with pamphlets for the
okay. Well, God bless you. Great work, great ministry work. My takeaway, Jerry, is that I absolutely love our Holy Father. I got to see him 5 feet away in Rome a couple years ago, and I could just feel the Holy Spirit energy. And so I just pray that he continues the beautiful leading our church for many, many, many years. And that's my takeaway. Yours, Jerry?
My takeaway is Pope Francis continues to be job security for those of us in Catholic media. So I think we'll have jobs for a while as long as he's the Pope. And I mean that in an endearing way. The world is always going to misunderstand the church and the papacy, and in this media age that we live in, we have got our work cut out for us. But folks, use Catholic sources for your information.
Amen to that. Now join us on Labor Day broadcast, where we do a kind of a joint broadcast with some of our affiliates, and you'd love to hear that. But until then, have a beautiful and blessed weekend.